Hello. Today I would like to talk a little bit about this book that I just finished called Defiant Dreams. So, this is a very inspiring book, and it's about the life of a girl who grew up in Afghanistan and how she risked everything um, for the opportunity to be educated. So, I took some notes. Which I think would be quite relevant to share with you, because when reading this book, I thought there'd be some things that something stood out to me, and I thought that if I'm doing a video, this is definitely what I would share. So basically, she's the whole story is around her um, growing up much of her life in Taliban Afghanistan, where obviously things were quite repressive, and there were also cultural norms in terms of what women can do and what women cannot do. She talks about how her older brother was encouraged to study, to pursue English, and him being able to speak English automatically put him on a pedestal compared to other members of his family. They'd oftentimes go to him, and he almost had a halo effect because he was studying and he was pursuing English. And as his English improved, I guess the whole family rallied around the brother to try and see how his dreams for studying overseas in the UK could be supported. On the contrary, when this girl, who's written this book, when she was actually trying to show some interest in English or in education, her brother would kind of just like mock her, give a little sneer, laugh at her, and I think other members of the family also had the same reaction, because apparently she was destined for a life of just being married very soon. And normally, she was saying, at that time, at about 16, normally girls would start getting married, so she felt like she was destined for a life of just being married and living behind closed doors. She talked about how the internet, the access to the internet, paved the way for opportunity, because behind closed doors she was able to teach herself English. She talked about the great her great inquisitive nature towards the language, and she oftentimes thought about a family member who was saying that when someone knows English, the door to the world is open. When they're talking about, obviously, the door to opportunity. So I found this very, very inspiring. She also talked about Khan Academy and how that for her was also a door to learning so much about math. She talked about how she went from subtraction to arithmetic, and how the more educated she became, the more meaning and self realization she had, and how it also, in a way, being educated also allowed her to understand more about herself and her meaning and her purpose, and how she can also, in turn, serve others and inspire others to also be quite bold and try and educate themselves. And ultimately, what happens is she ends up going to America, and she talks about the dichotomy. I really like how this book kind of also looks at the not only the cultural lens, but also the gender lens, the religious lens, and everything of life in Afghanistan, but also the dichotomy between her life in Afghanistan and then her university life in the US. She was talking about how on the plane there was a gentleman who was also from Afghanistan, and he did not know how to read, but she was helping him read things to see if he could kind of go towards the right gate and be helped with his boarding pass, etc. And the dichotomy was quite fascinating, because over here she was the one in authority, but she was saying that in Afghanistan, this gentleman who she was guiding would be the one to chaperone her, or to guide her outside, as the gender norms would normally dictate. So looking at this book through a cultural, socio-economic, gender and religious lens was quite fascinating, especially because books about Afghanistan or based in Afghanistan really fascinated me, especially Khalid Hosseini's books such as The Kite Runner and A Thousand Splendid Suns, which also talked about the life of women in Afghanistan. So obviously those are, I believe, are works of fiction, but this is a true story. Nevertheless, the parallels of life in Afghanistan, I was really drawn to it, and I found it really fascinating how also about the great suffering that the Afghan people had to go through, the political turmoil, and obviously the violence with bombings and obviously foreign intervention and stuff. She talks about all of this and how through all of this she's still trying to find a life for herself in education. And the tough thing is she challenged those gender norms, the cultural expectations, and at the same time behind closed doors she was able to educate herself and ultimately go overseas. I don't know. I just found this book really, really interesting. If you like inspiring books, then this is definitely one for you. If you like books where you kind of appreciate the difference between Western culture and more traditional cultures, this is definitely a book for you, because you also learn a lot about this in the process. So this book, I would say, is a must read, especially if you like autobiographies. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all there is to say. Would recommend this. Very inspiring book, and really makes you appreciate the difference between life in Afghanistan and that of the Western world. One more thing, she also talking about the difference. I remember she was saying how in this book she was saying that, you know, when she first went to the U.S., she went to the supermarket and someone said have a nice day, and she was just taken aback and just so disgusted by the blatant flirting that this person at the checkout counter was doing. But then she kind of started to understand cultural context of the Western world versus the context that she'd been raised up in Afghanistan. So very interesting book. Would highly recommend. And yeah, I hope this was useful for you, this brief snapshot, if you're considering reading this. So thank you very much, and see you next time.